so he didn't die, but he metaphorically died in that he was a totally different human being. So I was 6 when this happened, and I'm, seeing and observing and very, very early on, right? It's a very impressionable time in our psychological development.
Yeah.
So I'm watching this and really seeing at firsthand the possibility for loss and for change.
It all starts with a single question asked to an anonymous caller. What do you think happens when we die? And from there, the conversation goes in completely unexpected directions. Some speak with certainty, others with doubt. Some are still trying to make sense of it all. I'm Zach Ansell, and this is When We Die Talks, a podcast about death, meaning, and how that shapes the way we live. This podcast was born from my own fears around death and the need to talk about it. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. I'm glad you're here. This episode is brought to you by the Death Deck. Want to talk to your family members about the future but don't know how to start? The Death Deck is a lively game that uses multiple choice questions and a dose of humor to help start conversations about death, dying, and illness. Learn new and interesting things about your friends and family members while becoming prepared for the future. And new this fall, the Death Deck introduces the Dementia Deck, a planning tool to talk about the type of care and treatment you'd want if you were living with dementia. All Death Deck products are available at thedeathdeck.com. Hey, welcome back or welcome here if this is your first time. I mentioned in last week's Saturday Contemplation that we just hit the 2-year mark for When We Die Talks, and that I'd be doing a little giveaway to celebrate. I'm still finalizing some of the details, but I'll be announcing it on Friday over on Instagram. Most likely, it'll be one big winner who will get a few prizes from some of the podcast sponsors, along with a few of my favorite death-related products I've come across this year. That'll likely include a piece of memorial jewelry from Naya Emberly, the game The Death Deck, and a memorial journal called The Fabric of Me, plus maybe a few other things. Lots to be excited about as we head into year 3. I did mention in the anniversary episode that things might have to shift with the podcast at the end of the year. My current plan is to finish out the year with 4 more episodes. There will be a few breaks for the holidays, and then do 10 more episodes at the start of 2026 to hit a nice solid 50 episodes. That should take us through mid to late March. After that, I'll probably need to turn my attention to some other things. That might mean moving back to a bi-weekly schedule or possibly taking a little break. So once again, I'm asking for a little help. If you know of ways I could grow the podcast, collaborations, ideas, people to connect with, please let me know. And if you have any career suggestions, I'll take those too. It's been really nice to make this project my main focus after closing my photography business. But, I also have a mortgage to pay. So any help is appreciated, and thank you so much. Now, on to this week's call, and this one really dives into some things I really love. Our anonymous caller is a psychotherapist who had an early encounter with death, but in a different way. Her father was struck in the head by a baseball and survived, but as someone completely different. That moment shaped her entire understanding of grief, change, and what it means to die before we physically die. We talk about how grief stays with us long after the words run out, and how facing death can loosen our grip on perfectionism, amongst other things, and help us live with a little bit more freedom. It's one of those conversations that really hits on a lot of bigger themes I'm trying to accomplish with this project, the kind that reminds you just how close death and meaning really are. Let's get into the call. I hope you enjoy.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing well, Zach. How are you?
I'm good. I almost did something that I've never done on the show, and I almost called the wrong phone number. And so I could just jump into this conversation and this person be like, what are you talking about? So I'm glad that I got the right person. But yeah.
I'm glad too.
How's your day going?
It's good. It's good. I just wrapped up with my last client about an hour ago. So.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Yeah.
That's good.
Good.
Excited to have you.
How about you?
Well, I'm doing okay. My old dog, who I've talked about on the show before, he had another seizure yesterday. So that was not ideal. Oh. Definitely, this is the second one that he's had. So it was way less terrifying than the first one. It was like, okay, he's having a seizure. Okay, they gave me some medicine to give him if he's having a seizure. And so I was like, okay, got to get that medicine. Got to make sure, I kind of had the checklist this time versus the first time it was just like sheer panic of like, I don't know what's going on. So it's been a little chaotic, but yeah, I'm glad that we are able to get on the phone. I had to cancel my call yesterday because I was just like, I can't do this right now. Today I'm feeling better. So excited to do this.
Oh, well, I'm so sorry to hear. And how, I don't want to say synchronistic, but just like this experience woven right into this work that you're doing.
Totally.
With death. And it's an interesting path.
Yeah, it always feels weird to say, but like a huge part of this project was preparing for the future of my dog and just knowing that time was coming. And it was like, oh, I don't know if I've mentally prepared for this. And not that I necessarily think that you can fully mentally prepare for loss, but just kind of trying to wrap my head around it. So yeah, it's so interwoven into this. But the listeners definitely won't want to know more about me. They already know too much about me. We're here to talk about you and hear about your stories. Maybe we can just start off with, you can let me know why you even wanted to do a talk about death, something that people avoid.
Yeah, I know. What a unique topic that people don't often jump at the chance to talk about.
Totally.
So I have a unique, and I would even say deep fascination with death that really started pretty early on in my life. I'll give you the short version.
We'll probably come back to it later.
Yeah, we could definitely come back. So, when I was 6 years old, my father was playing baseball for a recreational team with his work. And they weren't supposed to be playing ball that day. It was raining and the pitcher was out. And so my dad stepped in as the pitcher. So it was raining, they weren't supposed to play, and he wasn't supposed to pitch. Kind of all these auspicious elements that weren't really supposed to happen, but nonetheless, it happened. And so he pitched, and it was a pop-up fly. And what happened was the ball came down and struck him on the left side of the head, which is, if you're familiar with the brain and psychology, it's all of your language, your verbal area, right, for speaking. So long story short, they took him to the hospital and brought him into surgery and had to do brain surgery, gave him a 50-50 chance to live. And when he came out about 2 months later, after being in a coma for 2 months after the surgery, that's when we realized just how impactful the injury was. So he came out of that coma and he was kind of a completely different person. He was 40 when it happened, and he was kind of like a child sort of state overnight. He couldn't talk, he couldn't walk, he had to kind of relearn everything. So he didn't die, but he metaphorically died in that he was a totally different human being. So I was 6 when this happened, and I'm, seeing and observing, and very, very early on, right? It's a very impressional time in our psychological development.
Yeah.
So I'm watching this and really seeing at firsthand the possibility for loss and for change. And so it really brought me onto my path to eventually becoming a psychotherapist, because I was so fascinated with this idea that bad things could happen to good people.
Yeah.
Bad things could happen at any time, and life can change in an instant. And it really just put me in awareness of the preciousness of life. And I think it really brought me into sort of face to face with death in a way.
Yeah.
Even though he didn't physically die, right? It's more of an
still of a death,
loss over the course of life. Yeah.
Wow. That is wild. So I am super excited to dive into this story, because like I was already like, oh my gosh, I have all these questions I want to ask, but I was like, hold on. Let's get through the intro part and then you can dive in, Zach. So I'm gonna pause for a second and bring it back so we can get to know you a little bit, very briefly, and then we can dive back into the conversation. And so maybe just to kind of get to know you a little bit, it doesn't have to be super specific, but maybe like city and state of where you're calling from, and then your favorite book and why.
Oh, gosh, I have so many. So I'm in Santa Barbara, California, and I'm a dual citizen. I'm originally from just outside of Toronto, Ontario. So I'm a Canadian / American. And favorite book, I am going to go with, because this is actually really appropriate for our theme, Emma Chodron's How We Live is How We Die. That is really a book that's been greatly influential in the last couple of years, and everything to do with Buddhism.
People are going to get sick of me saying this too, but I'm like, that is on I should clarify, because I say this all the time. It's like, it's on my list. My list is like 300 books. So it's a big
Of
list.
course.
So every time someone recommends a book, I'm like, oh yeah, that's on my list. And so I say this all the time too. I'm going to move it higher up on my list now, and hopefully I'll read it soon.
Moves to the number one slot.
Yeah, for, until I talk to someone else in a couple days or whenever it is. And then it's like, oh shoot. And then, it's a constant shuffle, but I've heard such fantastic things about that book.
It's one of those, I couldn't put it down and just wanted it to go on forever. So,
Well, thank you for that. Like I said, I'm going to add it to my list. I'll read it soon, and I'll text you once I read it and be like, oh, I finally did it. And hopefully that'll be, let's hope that's before the end of the year.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, you'll get to it when you get to it. What's meant to be, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you for that. And now, like I said, I'm super, super excited to get into this conversation because I think we're going to go some really fun places. Again, weird to say fun, but I'm going to go with it and not really question it too much. So we'll start with the big question of, what do you think happens when we die?
Ooh, this is a juicy one. Well, let me begin with, I believe that death is not the end, and that though our body physically dies, our consciousness does not. Our spirit goes on, and it goes on in some other form, some other kind of nature, right? Whether we kind of become one with the universe and dissipate into stardust, or become one with the cosmos or nature, but weaving in a Buddhist perspective of death, which holds this idea, right, that death is not the end, it's a transition of consciousness.
Yeah.
And that we actually just continue on to perhaps another life or another cycle of life, right?
Yeah.
And this idea that, Pema talks about, how we live is how we die. So how we perceive and experience ourselves, whatever we're working through in this lifetime, whatever is sort of left, let's call it unresolved at the end of our life, we may carry that into the next lifetime. But we also have an opportunity through what's called the bardos, the phases or the cycles after death, to potentially continue to clear out what we haven't been able to address in this lifetime. So in summary, I think that I can possibly come back into another life cycle. And that doesn't mean we come back as a human, right? We could come back as an animal, an insect, a tree. That's sort of dependent on, again, sort of, I think, what we're working through with our consciousness in this lifetime. So there's a sense that brings me some comfort when I think about death and imagining that there is some other universe where our soul or spirit is, until eventually it's time to return back here, or perhaps even somewhere else again.
Yeah, I don't know why I had this realization right now, or just thought, what happens if we turn up as quote unquote another being, on another planet?
Right.
Oh, I don't know.
Right.
But I think it's fascinating to think about this stuff.
I do too, and I'm open to that. There's so many theories, right? And I know there's a lot of, we could call them crazy theories out there. And my mind is just open because I've had so many interesting experiences through many varieties of processes that I'm just open to anything. The reality is we don't know. These are concepts, these are theories, but we also know with something like Buddhism is this is not a new concept, right? This has been around for centuries. So we're not just going off of, some individual person coming up with this new theory in sort of 2025. It's been around for a really long time.
Yeah.
So I believe in all possibilities.
I think that's a good way to go about it. I think in some ways that's what I'm trying to do too, is open myself up to, I guess, maybe spirituality. I don't exactly know the right word for it, but my background of just no faith growing up, no religion, and basically just thinking that nothing happens. I have started learning a lot about Buddhism, but I haven't read the Tibetan Book of the Dead. I know some things about it. I know about the bardos, but I don't know the intricate details of it. And it is kind of funny to me that so much of my life over the past couple of years has been wrapped around exploring death. And then as I'm actually diving into one of the world religions, I actually haven't even gotten into that. I'm interested to hear more about that. But there's so many ways I want to go with this, because you've set the table in a very interesting way, because I already feel like we could talk for 4 hours and just be scratching the surface, because it seems like you definitely have a good understanding of Buddhism. And so I would love to go down that rabbit hole. But I think the more interesting thing is you kind of mentioned, and I didn't jot down exactly how you phrased it, but you basically said you've had a bunch of experiences in your life, or maybe lives,
Yeah.
but you've had a lot of
Maybe. Who knows?
experiences in your life that have kind of shaped your beliefs around death. And so I'm curious if you want to kind of maybe go that direction.
Yeah, for sure. We can, I think, to go back to the beginning, I mean, the primary experience in shaping my relationship with death and curiosity about death is really this experience with my father's accident.
Yeah.
And then what it led me to, and I can talk about that and kind of, because what happened after that is, so I was 6, and really, I think when I was in my mid-teens, I really started to struggle with mental health, although I really wasn't quite aware of it at the time. I couldn't identify that or know that. But post-university, that's when it really kicked in. When I had graduated, all my friends had this plan. They were going to grad school. They had a job lined up. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I kind of felt like I was in this bardo of feeling lost and not knowing where I belonged and what my path was. And so, I kind of went on a couple of different adventures and voyages, and
which I'm already going to say, you went the smart route. I feel like we're all told that we're supposed to have it figured out and like know what we want to do when we're going into college, and you like study that thing, and then you're going to go work a job and do that for the rest of your life. I think that is like such a terrible, I don't know, con that we've all been told. That I think you went, I'm envious of the route that you went on. So sorry to cut you off, but I just wanted to say, I think you went the smart route.
Well, yeah, you know what it is? I think that I was so in touch with, let's call it my soul, my spirit, like that higher consciousness, that I looked around at people who didn't seem happy or who were struggling and suffering in following that traditional path.
Yeah.
But I was hell-bent on finding something that resonated with my heart. But you're right, because we're conditioned to do what we think we're supposed to do, right? According to culture and our family, because there's also a need to belong and to fit in and to feel like we matter in some way. So, and then we hit midlife, and we have, a midlife crisis, or I call it a midlife awakening. And then we start to go on that other path that you're talking about.
I love that you call it that.
What happened?
Because I've been
midlife awakening.
Because I've been floating that. That's what I have. I think I've mentioned on here maybe once or twice, but I think midlife crisis is terrible. And then I've also heard Brene Brown say the midlife unraveling. And I think that kind of hits it a little bit, but it also still kind of has this kind of negative connotation. And I do think it can be incredibly negative, and it's not an easy time of your life. And so, of course it can be and feel negative, but there's such an opportunity for growth and to actually move into what you're really meant to be doing. Again, sorry for cutting you off. I just love that you use that phrase.
No, that's exactly it. It's an opportunity. I love how you said it. I believe that too. It's an opportunity to actually discover ourselves. Yeah. To discover our true self. Yeah. Right? Which is what Buddhism is all about. It's like you get to be free and sort of be released into that state of nirvana once you have awakened into the true unconditional nature of mind.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So the accident really put me on that path in terms of seeking and longing and desiring and trying to figure out, who I was, what I wanted to be. But beyond that, what I realized in my early 30s was that I was also really still struggling with a lot of grief from that early childhood loss. Yeah. And so that going on that journey and going into about 10 years of sort of deep trauma-informed therapeutic work with various professionals, that's what really brought me into deeper connection with death. And a good place to start would be really psychedelics. And I say that gently. I know there's it's a very complex, layered. Totally. Also, I want to say really like a hot thing right now. And I'm, I really, really track that as a trend. But for me, it was like I found that after so many years of talk therapy and even somatic therapy and some EMDR, which is a more body approach to trauma. But I found it in a place where I was really stuck in my grief. And it really helped me to get in touch, in contact with things I had read in books, like Journey of Souls, Michael Newton's Journey of Souls, this idea of life beyond death, that we go on, the spirit goes on. And it was in some of these experiences in that work that I was able to access not just some beautiful vision, but a physical sense, a feeling in my body that I would be connected beyond this life. Mm-hmm. And that even when, I would lose my dad eventually one day, that there would still always be that bond and connection. Mm. Yeah. So it was this understanding, not at a cognitive level, but at a deep physical, somatic body feeling state, knowing that this is not the end.
Yeah.
And that when I'm not operating in that way, that I'm so attached to everything, even my grief, I was so attached to my grief in a sense.
Yeah.
That life really does go beyond this one. And just because people die or have an accident doesn't mean we have to be separated from them.
Mm, that's beautiful.
And I can talk more about that because that sounds a little bit esoteric, but
yeah. I feel like this one I can just like sit back and listen and be like, all right, go for it. I think because it's also, especially with my interest in Buddhism, it's like you're also speaking a familiar language to me, and probably is different for some of the listeners and maybe all the listeners or a majority of the listeners, but like attachment and stuff like that. It's like, oh yeah, right. This is definitely stuff that I've been thinking a lot about in my life and how that relates to everything. And so, yeah, I continue on if you want. I can ask a question, but I'm loving where this is heading.
Yeah. Well, I think so. I'll kind of continue on with that thread of so this idea that. So let me back up for a minute. So I'm a licensed therapist. I've been in practice for over 10 years now, but I also spent, again, being this seeker, this, curious person who wants to really know the truth and what life's about and all these big questions, right? Where do we go after we die? What's the meaning of life? Back in my early 30s, I spent 5 years working for a very well-known, let's call her spiritual teacher named Byron Katie.
Okay.
And Byron Katie teaches a lot. It's kind of like spiritual CBT, if you know anything about CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, right?
Yeah.
Your thoughts are the cause of your suffering.
Yep.
And so Katie had her own version or formula of that, and it helped me to deepen my understanding of how my thoughts could be causing my suffering. In somatic-based or trauma-informed therapy, we know that the thoughts are only one piece, but we also have to include the body because that's where these traumatic memories are stored. And so we can't just change our thoughts to feel better. We need to work with both mind and body. We can't separate them.
Shocking.
Right. What a new concept, right? Not at all. And so through, I think, that experience and practice with working for and with Katie, working with the mind, and then doing my clinical hours to become licensed, I really got to understand using body, mind, and spirit approach in challenging ourselves beyond these core beliefs that we hold, right? If I'm holding a belief that nothing happens after I die, and that causes a lot of pain and suffering or anxiety in my life, then I may want to examine that thought, right? Because the reality is we don't know, right?
Is this a free therapy session right now?
It's probably exactly really hard for me not to go to right. It's always with me.
Totally.
But really, like, if we stay with that, we don't know, right?
Yeah.
We don't know. But if I'm open to a different possibility, then I can sort of like reduce my suffering even a little bit.
Yeah. I think that's also like where I'm at with this process. It's like opening up to new possibilities and maybe holding that in one hand. And then in the other, also saying, it can still be nothingness. That can still be your belief, but you've got to have some acceptance around that. You've got to figure out how to not have this fear, anxiety, and attachment to nothingness. And there's a million different ways to tackle that too. But I'm right with you. This is the seed of a lot of fear in my life, which then affects how I live my life, whether you really want to admit it or not. I have noticed by thinking about death and talking about death, I made a joke just a little bit earlier. I was in a little text group with my dad and a buddy of ours, and they were talking about something, and I was like, oh, this would be a good thing to put in my dad's will. And our friend like freaked out and he's like, wow, you guys are being so morbid and this and that. And I'm like, dude, it's going to happen. Like, and it's just that fear and the anxiety comes up. And so a lot of people, and I was doing it too, just shoving it down and saying, nope, not going to deal with it now because it's not happening right now. And to your point of what you spoke about with your dad, it doesn't necessarily even have to be a quote unquote full death or whatever we want to call it. Accidents happen all the time. Freak accidents happen.
Yeah.
And that could be result in a death, or it could result in brain trauma, or it could result in a million different things that change how you look at life.
Right. And so when you expose yourself to the thing you're afraid of, it becomes less scary.
Yeah.
And that's what we don't do in this culture. We don't talk about death. And then we wonder why so many people have so much anxiety. It's because deep down inside, our psyche, our soul knows that we're going to have to face that. And so at midlife, hence the midlife awakening.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, now I'm aware that I'm closer to death than birth. And something in me is going, are you going to really live? Are you going to really go for what you want?
Totally.
Because what do you have to lose at this point?
Yeah.
Like death is coming for you.
Yeah. It's gonna win at some point.
Yeah. I find I've been thinking about this concept a lot the last couple weeks. My mom has had a recent, what we think is possibly likely cancer.
I'm sorry.
Scare diagnosis. Thank you. Yeah. It's again, putting me really in touch with the idea of death and what happens when we die. And her and I, we have a lot of open conversations about this. Like she's really into it too. We're like, okay, so, give me some signs, when you're on the other side. So I know, but it's sort of, interestingly enough, though I have been feeling waves of grief and fear and worry because I know my mind very well and I use a lot of mindfulness and meditation in my day-to-day life to help me. I've also been noticing that I have felt oddly really motivated lately. And I can't help but to think that it's a direct correlation to like when we're faced with a diagnosis, right? And it's not even mine. It's it's my mom's. But
just
when
the awareness
of
it.
It's like we all know it's not going to happen, but all of a sudden you're told, or let's say someone's told you have 90 days to live. All of a sudden, that could go many ways. But it's like, whoa, now I want to live.
Yeah, totally.
So I've been thinking about just death and being a motivator, as strange as that sounds. But
it doesn't sound strange to me because I feel like ultimately at the end of the day, with this project, I think that's what I'm realizing the most is, I definitely want to work out my feelings around death, but the true realization that I've had on this journey is it's allowed me to look at life differently and say, all right, this is your chance. This is your opportunity. So like, why are you so afraid of failing or getting rejected or all these like constructs that we put on ourselves when it's like, you're going to die. And so I would say you are speaking my exact language because I just had my anniversary episode. And one of the things that I said in there, and I've said it privately, but I said it more vocally there. And to use the phrase that I hate that we've already talked about, I want to force people into a midlife crisis. That's what I want this project to do is to like wake people up, and so it's much, I like midlife awakening better, but I want to wake people up to the fact that this is going to happen. And I've had people say, I'm almost 38. And so this started probably around 35. And I've had people be like, you're too young to have a midlife crisis. It's closer to 50. And I'm like, well, number one, I don't know if you're doing the math right there.
Right.
But even if it is
until 100.
Yeah. Even if it is, okay, we're going to leave the math out, but 50 is when you have a midlife crisis. I'd much rather have it at 35. I just gained 15 years. Potentially. I could die in those 15 years. It sounds like you had yours at about like 12, 13. So you're a lot ahead of me. But but yeah, it's so important.
It is, and it's normal. Like midlife can happen. I mean, it's just, we can't pinpoint it to an exact age. And I think it depends on that person's path, their journey, their consciousness. And I think it's normal for it to start. I mean, especially with the world and the state of what's going on these days.
Yeah.
As early as the 20s and early 30s, because there's so much uncertainty.
Yeah.
Like, we just don't know what the world looks like.
Yeah.
And it looks so grim, in so many ways. So I really love what you said about, like, I almost want to say, like, your mission. It sounds like your mission
Yeah.
is to wake people up,
Yeah.
Because I feel kind of similar to, we talked briefly about this book I've been writing, and
Yeah.
that's kind of the purpose of this book. And it's like, let's wake up and realize that we're going to die.
Yeah.
And how can we utilize even our painful experience to actually be really present in life and not make it wrong or bad or a problem, even though it's uncomfortable and scary, but have it actually be part of our awakening.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Species.
That's beautiful. And I love that you wrote the book. You did it. We had talked about before, at the end of the call, we'll stay on and chat a little bit after. I do that with basically everybody. If they remember, sometimes people just hang up and it's like, okay, all right. I can't tell. It's not necessarily like every single person, but I've had quite a few people who have been like, I'm thinking about writing a book about my grief, or I'm thinking about starting a project, or I'm thinking about doing this. And I'm like, just do it. Just start.
Right.
And I think that's the other thing with my entire life, plagued by perfectionism. And that has always held me back. And I think that's another one where I'm like, I'm done trying to be perfect. And that's maybe more than just this death journey that has taught me that. But with this, I could spend all the time trying to make everything perfect and finding the right people and this and that. And it was just like, I just have to start. And this isn't even the format that it was when I started. I was interviewing friends and stuff.
Right.
And then I found this kind of anonymous format, and it was like, oh, this is really cool. I'm connecting with strangers. I have no idea where the conversation's going to go. And if I would have let my perfection get in the way, I probably wouldn't have ever started, because, it needs to be perfect when I put it out to the world. It's like, just start writing, just start whatever, just put pen to paper. You can always go back, because nobody's going to really see it.
It's true. Yeah. And I love what you said about just like the world. What I think the world wants from us is our gifts in the most raw form. They don't have to be perfect, but trust me, I talk to people all day long, like about their problems, and everyone feels this. Everyone is thinking this, these conversations about, suffering and loss, and like, it's very real. And the more we talk about it and engage our gift in whatever form it is, right? A book, a podcast, how cool. To me, that's like, wow, you're utilizing one of your important gifts to give back to your community. And I think, like what you said, I'm imagining this gives you probably motivation and excitement, in your life. It's like following that mission.
Oh, totally. And that was lacking before. And I think that's what,
right.
To keep bringing the phrase back up, the midlife awakening, like, it's opening up to that purpose that, early on, I think, and not saying this is necessarily true for everybody, but I think early on in our lives, a lot of that, we kind of are following this path, this plan of what society and culture tells us. It's safe, although I don't know how safe the plan is anymore. And you go down that for a bit, and hopefully you wake up and say, wait, hold on, this doesn't align with who I am, or this doesn't give me value or purpose. And I think there's the other aspect of, I talk to a friend all the time. He has a pretty solid state. Well, I don't know if there's such thing as a stable job anymore either, but relatively in this world, stable job. And, we kind of talk about, I get to do all this great, I get to travel and do all this great stuff. If that trade-off is worth it, I get to go travel to see all these great places, then, maybe that's where, maybe that's the purpose of it is, hey, I'm doing this so I can, go explore and do these things. I just don't think that that's necessarily something that I could do. I'm like, I would much rather not have something stable, which sounds terrifying to say, but I'd much rather not have something stable, but day in and day out be like, I love what I'm doing. Because I feel like the other way, I just have my soul crushed.
That's right. And that's the path of the soul. It's like, I think some people, without judgment, are just so much more comfortable in that space of the external safety and what that brings for them internally, which makes sense. We do need money to pay our bills and
unfortunately.
Right. It's just kind of a reality. But some of us have a bigger, I think, tolerance or threshold for not being able to tolerate the mundane, the uncomfortableness of being in that sort of cog in the wheel lifestyle. Like I die there. My soul dies there. My partner, same thing. He's just like, oh my God, I'd rather not. He worked a corporate job for 25 years and just couldn't do it anymore. So I think it's so, and that's the gift of midlife, because we realize we don't have the luxury to keep doing that. We have to actually start living and following the thread of soul. So I get excited when I hear people. I love the stories, when the client comes in, they're like, I decided to quit my job. And I'm like, you're going to follow your dream because the time is limited, and why not now? And yes, maybe we need a plan to do that, of course, to do it wisely. But I get so excited because it feels like people following their hearts versus just following the expectation.
The norm.
The norm.
Well, this is so strange. I feel like this has been such a wonderful conversation. I don't want it to go on for too long. And so I think I'm going to wrap it up here. But I think I'm also going to tease, and we actually haven't really talked about this at all, but there's probably more coming from this conversation between the two of us. And so I think I'll probably just say that because I still feel like there's so much that we can talk about. And so I think maybe I'll just tease that to the audience that there's very likely more coming and more conversations between the two of us, if you think that's fair to say.
Oh, yeah, it sounds fun. It's like I said, deep, meaningful conversation. That's what I live for.
Perfect. So, I didn't want to like say something that you're like, nope, that doesn't sound right. But because I like I said, I think we could probably go on for another like 2, 3, 4 hours and just be like, oh yeah, that was great. So I think I'll wrap it up here for now. I would say such an interesting conversation because I almost thought, we started out and I thought we were going to go very big picture, almost maybe from like the Buddhism perspective. And then we kind of were like, okay, you know what? We're going to talk about your experiences, and still ended up talking about all these big picture things, which I find so fascinating. I also love that it sounds like we have very similar thought processes or just ways at looking at the world. So, I mean, it's always lovely to talk to someone where it's like, oh, cool, I'm not crazy. Or if I am crazy, there's at least one more of me. So I'm, at least I'm crazy and not alone. But I just wanted to say it was such a fantastic conversation. I enjoyed every minute of it.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Thanks for having me on. It was, when I stumbled across your information somewhere, I think I was on LinkedIn, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. Let's talk about that. So no, you're not crazy. You're certainly not alone. And thank you so much for having me. It was such a joy, such a fun time.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I alluded to, I think there's more coming soon. So thank you again. And I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Zach. You too.
All right. Bye. This call was actually recorded a little while ago, and while there's still nothing official to announce yet, I'm hoping to share an update before the end of the year about what's next with this caller. What I love most about this conversation is how it balanced psychology and spirituality, that space between what we can understand and what we just have to feel. There's something really grounding about hearing a therapist talk about grief, not as something to fix, but something to live alongside. And that idea of a midlife awakening may be one of my favorite things that I've discovered from this project. Thanks for listening to this episode of When We Die Talks. These conversations don't offer answers, but they do open space to reflect, to feel less alone, and maybe to see things a little bit differently than before. If you'd like to explore your own beliefs out loud, you can apply to be an anonymous caller at whenwedietalks.com. And if a full call feels like too much, the voicemail is always open. Call 971-328-0864 and share what you believe happens when we die. Another way to support the podcast is through When We Die Talks Plus. Members not only get early access to episodes, but also every Saturday contemplation, short guided reflections to help you pause and sit with these questions in your own life. And of course, sharing the podcast with friends or leaving a review goes a long way too. Until next time, have a good life.
Greetings, Zach. Got this number off of your interview with our other buddy, Zach. So I just wanted to share with you that, my name's Christopher, aka Papa Life. I just wanted to share with you that I too resonate with having an early and maybe even continued fear of death. It's something that came up a lot for me during psychedelic experiences and also just in regular waking life. But something, and I've been multi-spiritual seeking for a long time, everything from Sufism, was raised Christian, Catholic, Lutheran, Presbyterian, read about Rastafarian, all the things, the Vedas. But the book that really helped quell my fear was a book by Elena Gabor. She's a spiritual hypnotherapist and past life regressionist, and she wrote a book called Home at the Tree of Life. Home at the Tree of Life. And that book describes, or it's a conversation that Elena has while she has a client under hypnotherapy, and kind of akin to something like The Sleeping Prophet or Edgar Cayce, where he channels an entity and speaks to spirit guides. It's a really short, easy read. It gave me great imagery, and I hope that it can help you, just get closer to being at peace with death. And then there's also another book called Many Lives, Many Masters by Brian Weiss. It's also a great book, kind of under the same topic. And I still have no idea what happens after death, but I do believe this material body fades away. The noble truth of suffering is gone, and I'm part of the collective consciousness. All right, hope you have a blessed day. Take care, Zach. Bye.